Simone was in the middle of a major life transition, living alone for the first time, starting a new job, building her adult presence in the world. She was trying to hold herself together emotionally, while old anxieties surfaced in new ways. As a nurse, student, daughter, and sister, people saw her accomplishments, her polished presence, her put together life, her service to others. But inside, she was struggling with fear. Fear in her relationships, fear in her faith. I noticed this tension, she told us, between the God I personally sensed and the religious expectations around me. When Simone took our quiz, something shifted. Taking this quiz was like someone turned on the light in a dark room, she said. I thought I was just tired or not spiritual enough. But the results clearly showed me it was trauma patterns, not me. That insight alone lifted such a heavy weight off my shoulders. You see, Simone had been blaming herself for feeling disconnected from God. But what she discovered through our group coaching was something millions of Christian women carry without realizing it. She wasn't spiritually deficient. She was experiencing the invisible wounds of religious trauma that had taught her to stay small, stay quiet, stay unseen. If you've ever felt that tension between the God you sense and the religious expectations around you, if you've ever wondered whether God really sees you or just the role you play, if you've ever felt noticed for what you do, but invisible for who you are, this conversation is for you. Because what Simone learned, and what you're about to discover, is that your invisibility isn't humility. It's a hidden barrier that's been blocking your view of how God really sees you. Welcome to Healing Religious Trauma, the podcast for Christian women ready to heal without losing their faith. If you're feeling the weight of spiritual pressure and distant from the God you used to trust, you're in the right place. I'm Deborah Schaefer, spiritual healing coach, founder of the Healing Religious Trauma Circle, and someone who's walked the hard road of untangling toxic faith. If you're ready to make sense of your story, find peace with a safe, loving God, and hear stories that remind you you're not alone, grab your tea, toss the rule book, and let's go. You know, one of the things I hear most from women in our community is this: I thought I was the only one. Maybe you've been carrying this invisible ache for years, wondering if you're the only one who feels distant from God, despite trying so hard to stay faithful. Or perhaps you've questioned whether you're just too sensitive, too much, or not spiritual enough. Here's what I want you to know. You're not alone. That's exactly why I created the Coming Home Journey, a 6-month guided experience designed specifically for Christian women healing from religious trauma. This isn't about throwing away your faith. It's about coming home to the God you always hoped was real. In this journey, you'll walk alongside other women who understand exactly what you're carrying. You'll have a safe space to ask questions you've been afraid to voice. And you'll discover that healing your relationship with God doesn't mean losing Him. It means finding Him in ways that feel truly safe and loving. The Coming Home Journey walks you through 3 healing seasons: unraveling the trauma, instilling the truth, and creating your new story. Together, we'll gently uncover all 12 of the hidden barriers, what I call the aftershocks of religious trauma, that may be keeping you feeling stuck, anxious, and disconnected from God's love. But maybe you're wondering, am I ready for a 6-month journey? Do I even know what I'm carrying? That's where our free religious trauma assessment comes in. At healingreligionstrauma.org, you can discover in just 10 minutes how each of these 12 hidden barriers might be showing up in your life. Just click on the Take the Quiz in the top bar. You'll get a personalized report that shows you exactly where you're impacted and where you're already finding freedom. And as my thank you for taking that brave step, you'll receive my complete Essentials Starter Kit, including my book, He Is Enough, a gentle mini course, and full access to our supportive community. It's the perfect way to dip your toes in and see if this healing path feels right for you. Let me share more of Simone's story, because her journey captures what so many of you are walking through. Simone is a nurse, student, daughter, sister, someone who has spent her life caring for others, and in the last couple of years, she's been building her adult presence in the world. She came to our group coaching program in the middle of a major life transition. Living alone for the first time, starting a new job, trying to hold herself together emotionally while old anxieties surfaced in new ways. From the outside, people noticed her accomplishments, her polished presence, her ability to care for others. But here's what Simone was really carrying. I was struggling with fear in my relationships, fear in my faith. I didn't know if I'd ever experienced a true connection, especially a romantic connection, after recent heartbreak. Spiritually, I felt something was off. I noticed this tension between the God I personally sensed and the religious expectations around me. She had become an expert at what I call helpful invisibility, being there for patients, family, and everyone else. But when it came to her own needs, her own heart, her own relationship with God, she felt like she was invisible. What broke my heart about Simone's story was this. She had been blaming herself. She thought if she just tried harder, if she could somehow resolve the tension between what she sensed about God and what she'd been taught about him, everything would be okay. You see, when I first met Simone years ago, I could see it immediately. She was a shining star with a special mission in this world. But somewhere along the way, she had learned to dim that light to make others comfortable. The very brilliance that God had placed in her had become something she felt she needed to hide. But here's the beautiful part. Through our group coaching, Simone experienced what she calls a breakthrough moment. I found the strength to rewrite the story I'd been believing about myself. To have that witnessed and to see it inspire others, it was transformational. Her mindset shifted from judgment and fear to curiosity and grace. I feel more optimistic, she told us. I believe in myself again, and my faith, it feels rooted, not in fear or performance, but in real connection with God and with others. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. Because if you've ever felt that same tension between the God you sense and the religious expectations around you, you need to know it's not your faith that's broken. It's the hidden barriers and false beliefs that have been keeping you stuck. Maybe as I was sharing Simone's story, something stirred in your heart. Maybe you recognized yourself in that tension between the God you sense and the religious expectations around you, or in that pattern of caring for everyone else while your true self remains hidden, even from those closest to you. What I want to talk with you about today is something I call a hidden barrier, specifically the barrier that whispers, I'm invisible. And I call it hidden because most of us don't even realize we're carrying it. We think it's just our personality. Maybe we're naturally humble. Maybe we're just good at putting others first. But here's what I've discovered in walking with many women through their healing from religious trauma. Invisibility isn't a character trait. It's a survival strategy. And for so many of us who grew up in faith environments, this pattern often took root in places where being seen, especially as a woman, was considered dangerous, prideful, or even inappropriate, where silence and self-erasure were spiritualized as virtue. While this invisibility may have kept you safe at one time, it's now keeping you from the deep connection with God and others that your heart is longing for, and from stepping into the fullness of what God has called you to do in this world. This barrier whispers things like, your needs don't matter. It's safer to stay small. Being seen is dangerous. And your voice won't make a difference anyway. But what if I told you that God never intended for you to disappear? What if your invisibility isn't humility? It's actually a wound that needs healing. What if those moments when you feel most unseen are actually invitations, glimpses of grace, calling you back to the truth that you were created to be known, to be seen, to take your rightful place in God's story? All right, I want to go through a few points today. The first one is what invisibility really is. When I first started working with women healing from religious trauma, I kept hearing the same heartbreaking phrase. I feel like I could disappear and no one would notice. But here's what I discovered. These weren't women who were actually invisible. They were leading Bible studies, volunteering at church, raising families, pouring themselves out in service. From the outside, they looked fine. But inside, they felt like ghosts in their own lives. And what really made me sad was realizing that invisibility wasn't something that just happened to them. It was something they learned to do. It became a survival strategy that once kept them safe, but was now keeping them from the deep connection their hearts were longing for. So, what does invisibility actually look like in real life? It shows up as always scanning the room to see who needs you, but never considering who might want to see you. You've become an expert at anticipating everyone else's needs before they even voice them, while your own needs stay buried so deep you're not even sure what they are anymore. You might be the one everyone counts on, but somehow no one really knows you. People love the version of you that serves them, that remembers their birthday, that asks, "How are you?" But when someone turns that question back to you, you deflect with, "Oh, I'm fine." You've perfected what I call helpful invisibility. Cleaning up after the meeting while everyone else chats. Staying late to turn off the lights. Being praised for being low maintenance because you never asked for much. Here's what changed everything for me. I realized that this pattern often starts in religious environments where being seen, especially as a woman, was framed as dangerous, prideful, or even inappropriate. You learn that good women serve silently, that humility meant shrinking, that taking up space might be labeled as attention-seeking or ungodly. And here's the scripture that opened my eyes. Jesus himself said in Matthew 5:14-16, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Did you catch that? Jesus never said, "Hide your light." He said, "Let it shine." He said, "You're meant to be seen." So here's something that you can do that may help you to shift this. Try this week. I call it the one true thing. When someone asks how you are, instead of automatically saying, "Fine," pause for just a moment. Ask yourself, how am I really? Then share just one honest thing. I'm actually feeling a little overwhelmed with everything on my plate. I'm grateful, but also really tired. I'm working through some things. It sounds small, but for women who've been invisible for years, speaking one true thing about their inner world can feel revolutionary. Because you can't be truly seen until you're willing to be truly known. And that starts with knowing yourself well enough to have something real to share. Okay, the next point I want to talk about is how this pattern gets installed. Now, I want to be really honest with you about how this invisibility pattern actually gets planted in our hearts. Because understanding where it came from is key to loosening its grip. For many of us who grew up in religious environments, invisibility wasn't just encouraged, it was spiritualized. We were taught that being seen was dangerous for our souls. Maybe you heard things like, a gentle and quiet spirit is precious to God. But it was interpreted to mean that your voice, your ideas, your presence even, should be as small as possible. Or let the men lead became code for your insights don't really matter. You might have watched other women get labeled as too much when they spoke up, asked questions, or expressed strong emotions. You learned that the women who got approval were the ones who stayed in the background, who remembered everyone else's needs but never mentioned their own, who quietly served while the important conversations happened around them or in another room. Sometimes it wasn't what was said, it was what wasn't said. When your excitement was met with, "Not now, honey." When your pain was met with, "Just pray about it." When your questions were brushed off with, "You just need to have more faith." Over time, these environments train us to read the room constantly. We become experts at emotional temperature taking, always adjusting ourselves to keep everyone else comfortable. We learn that our visibility might rock the boat, cause problems, or make us seem prideful. Many of us grew up hearing 1 Peter 3:4 about the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit. But somewhere along the way, gentle and quiet became code for invisible and voiceless. We missed that even Sarah, held up as a model of submission in that same passage, had her own voice and reactions. She questioned God's promises, expressed doubt, and wasn't just a silent follower. Peter actually commends her for not giving way to fear, meaning she learned to trust God's voice over her circumstances. Or we heard about Mary sitting at Jesus' feet in Luke 10:39, but we missed that Jesus defended her choice to be present, to learn, to take up space in a room where women weren't supposed to be students. So here's the sad part about this, is that many of us began to believe that God himself preferred us invisible, that somehow our full presence was too much even for him. We started to think that disappearing was actually a form of worship, that the smaller we made ourselves, the more room there was for God. But that's not the God of Scripture. That's not the Jesus who stopped everything to see the woman who touched his robe, who called her daughter in front of everyone, who made sure her story would be told for generations. When you realize that your invisibility was learned, that it was a brilliant way your heart found to stay safe in environments that couldn't handle your full presence, it stops being a character flaw and starts being something you can heal. You weren't born to disappear. You adapted to disappear. And what was learned can be unlearned. All right, and here's this last point I would like to make. So, what does it actually look like when this barrier starts to soften? When you begin to step out of invisibility and into the light God always intended for you? Let me share a story that changes everything. In Mark 5:25-34, there's a woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years. She was ceremonially unclean, cut off from community, labeled by her struggle. She'd spent everything she had trying to get better, but only grew worse. When she heard Jesus was coming, she thought, if I can just touch the edge of his garment, I'll be healed. Notice her strategy. Touch just enough of God to be healed, but not enough to be seen. How many of us have tried that exact approach? We reach quietly for God without making too much noise, without drawing attention, without expecting to be truly seen. But here's what happened that changed everything. The moment she touched his garment, power went out from him, and she was instantly healed. And then, this is the part that transforms how we see God. Jesus stopped. He turned around and asked, "Who touched me?" The disciples thought he was being ridiculous. There was a crowd pressing against him. Everyone was touching him. But Jesus knew this touch was different. This was the touch of desperate faith, and he wasn't content to let it go unnoticed. The woman came forward trembling, probably expecting rebuke. But instead, Jesus looked at her and said, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering." He called her daughter, not woman with an issue, not the unclean one, daughter. He didn't just heal her body. He restored her name, her place, her visibility. He made sure everyone knew that her touch mattered. Her faith mattered. She mattered. So, what shifts when you start becoming visible again? Here's what I've watched happen in women's lives when they begin to heal this pattern. They stop deflecting compliments and start receiving them. They begin to share their real thoughts in conversations instead of just agreeing with everybody else. They ask for what they need without a long apology attached. One woman told me, "I realized I'd been having the same conversation for 20 years, asking how everyone else was doing, but never letting anyone really know me." When she started sharing her actual feelings, her relationships deepened in ways that surprised her. You might also practice what I call sacred space taking. Maybe it's sitting in the front row instead of the back, or sharing an insight in your small group, or wearing something that makes you feel radiant instead of invisible. Here's what's beautiful about this healing. When you start showing up as your real self, you create space for others to do the same. Your visibility becomes an invitation for other women to step out of hiding too. And with God, you discover that He's not just tolerating your presence, He's delighting in it. Zephaniah 3:17 says, "He rejoices over you with singing," not over your service, not over your productivity, over you. So I want to leave you with this truth from Isaiah 60, verse 1. "Arise, shine, for your light has come." Your light isn't something you have to create or earn. It's something that's already there, waiting to be uncovered. The woman you're becoming, the one who shows up fully, who speaks truth, who takes up the space God designed for her, she's not a future fantasy. She's who you've always been, underneath the survival patterns. So let's bring this all together, friend. We've talked about what invisibility really is, not a character flaw, but a survival strategy you learned when being fully seen didn't feel safe. We've looked at how this pattern gets installed, often in religious environments that spiritualized disappearing, and we've explored what healing can look like, that beautiful journey from hiding to being known. So here's one other thing. This week, I challenge you to practice the one true thing we talked about. When someone asks how you are, pause and share something real. Just one thing. Notice what it feels like to let yourself be known, even in that small way. And as you do this, remember this truth from Isaiah 41:3. "I have called you by name. You are mine." God doesn't just see you in general. He knows your name. He's calling you by name, out of hiding and into the light. You're not invisible to the one who made you. You never have been. And learning to be seen by others starts with remembering that you've always been seen by Him. The woman who shows up fully, who speaks truth, who takes her rightful place. She's not someone you have to become. She's who you've always been, waiting to be uncovered. It's time to let her be seen. Hey friend, if this episode encouraged you and made you feel a little less alone, would you share it with someone who needs that too? And while you're at it, would you please leave a quick review on Apple Podcasts? It's like a virtual hug that helps more women find their way here. Next time, we're diving into another hidden barrier that keeps so many Christian women stuck. I'm not enough. We'll explore how this exhausting treadmill of spiritual performance gets started, and most importantly, how to step off it and into the truth of who God says you already are. Until then, remember, you're not too sensitive, you're not broken, and you're not alone. Keep asking questions, keep seeking truth, and keep believing that healing is possible. I'll see you next time.